The janitor's sleeve rolled up. The room fell silent, and the billionaire's coffee cup slipped from her trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor. On his forearm, inked in faded black lines, was a phoenix rising from binary code, the exact same symbol she had tattooed on her own shoulder 6 years ago, the exact same symbol her late husband had designed the night before he disappeared. "Where did you get that?" Her voice cracked. "Where did you get that tattoo?" The janitor, a quiet man named Marcus Cole, who had spent the last 4 years mopping these very floors, looked at the woman he had just helped translate a corrupted line of encrypted software. His eyes held a sadness she hadn't noticed before. "I think," he said softly, "it's time I told you the truth about your husband." But before we understand how two strangers from opposite worlds collided in a skyscraper at 2 in the morning, we need to go back to the beginning, back to the night everything changed for Marcus Cole. Marcus wasn't always a janitor. 7 years ago, he was one of the brightest software engineers in Silicon Valley. His name appeared in tech magazines. His algorithms were taught in university courses. At 29 years old, he had helped build the security infrastructure for 3 Fortune 500 companies, and his future seemed limitless. But none of that mattered to him as much as his daughter Lily. Lily came into his life unexpectedly. Her mother, Sarah, was a graphic designer Marcus had met at a tech conference. Their relationship was brief but passionate, and when Sarah became pregnant, they decided to make it work. For 3 beautiful years, they were a family. Then Sarah got sick. The diagnosis came like a hurricane, aggressive, fast, and merciless. Within 8 months, she was gone, leaving Marcus alone with a 2-year-old girl who had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn spirit. Grief does strange things to people. Some throw themselves into work, others fall apart completely. Marcus did both. He tried to keep coding, tried to maintain his position at one of the most prestigious tech firms in the country. But how do you debug a system at 3 in the morning when your daughter is crying for a mother who will never come home? How do you meet deadlines when daycare closes at 6 and your meetings run until 8? The company was understanding at first. They gave him time off. They offered condolences. But corporate sympathy has an expiration date, and Marcus reached his quickly. "We need someone who can commit fully," his supervisor said, not unkindly. "Maybe when things settle down, you can come back." Things never settled down. They only got harder. Marcus sold the house. He moved to a smaller apartment. He cashed out his stock options to pay for Sarah's medical bills and Lily's needs. And when the money started running thin, he did something he never imagined he would do. He took a job as a night janitor at Ashford Technologies, one of the biggest tech companies in New York City. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had helped build systems more complex than anything in this building, and now he was emptying trash cans and mopping floors. But the schedule worked. He could drop Lily off at school in the morning, sleep while she was in class, pick her up in the afternoon, spend the evening with her, and work through the night while she slept at a trusted neighbor's apartment. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what he had dreamed of. But it was honest work, and it kept his daughter fed and clothed and loved. That was enough. It had to be enough. 4 years passed in this rhythm. Lily grew from a toddler into a curious, bright-eyed 6-year-old who loved dinosaurs and hated broccoli. She thought her father was a superhero because he cleaned the whole building every night. She didn't know about the PhD he never finished, the patents with his name on them, or the life he had walked away from. And Marcus preferred it that way. He had made peace with his new existence. He knew every corner of the Ashford Technologies building, every flickering light that needed replacing, every elevator that made strange sounds, every executive who worked late and never acknowledged his presence. He was invisible, a ghost who kept the building spotless and asked for nothing in return. Until the night he met Victoria Ashford. Victoria was the kind of woman magazines wrote cover stories about. At 42, she was the CEO of the company her late husband had founded, Ashford Technologies. She had a sharp mind, sharper instincts, and the kind of beauty that made people stumble over their words. But those who worked closest to her knew something the public didn't. Behind the confident smile and the designer clothes, Victoria was barely holding on. Her husband, Daniel Ashford, had disappeared 6 years ago under mysterious circumstances. The official story was a boating accident off the coast of Greece. His body was never recovered. The case went cold, and Victoria was left to raise their 4-year-old son, James, while simultaneously saving a company that was on the verge of collapse. She had done it. Against all odds, she had turned Ashford Technologies into a multi-billion-dollar empire. But success came at a price. She worked 18-hour days. She barely saw her son, who was now 10, and increasingly resentful of her absence. And at night, when the building emptied and the silence grew heavy, she often found herself staring at the photograph on her desk, the only picture she had of Daniel smiling, taken the night before he vanished. What haunted her most wasn't the grief, it was the questions. Daniel had been acting strangely in the weeks before his disappearance, paranoid, secretive. He had mentioned something about a project he was working on, something that would change everything. When she pressed him for details, he kissed her forehead and said, "When it's ready, you'll understand. Trust me." She never got the chance to understand, and for 6 years she had tried to forget, tried to move on, tried to convince herself that some questions didn't have answers. Then, 3 weeks ago, something impossible happened. She received an encrypted email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line was blank. The body contained only 3 words: "He didn't drown." Victoria tried everything to trace the email. She hired investigators. She called in favors. She spent sleepless nights analyzing the metadata. But whoever sent it knew exactly how to stay hidden. The only clue was a file attachment, a corrupted piece of code that her entire IT department couldn't decipher. It looked like a fragment of a larger program, written in a language that predated modern operating systems. Her best engineers called it gibberish. Her security consultants called it a hoax. But Victoria couldn't let it go, because that code contained something only she and Daniel would recognize, a variable named Phoenix Rising 1987. 1987 was the year Daniel was born, and Phoenix Rising was the name of the first program they had ever built together back when they were college students falling in love over late nights and energy drinks. Someone out there knew their secret. Someone was trying to tell her something about her husband. And she would decode that message if it killed her. The night Marcus Cole's life changed forever started like any other. He clocked in at 10 p.m., grabbed his cleaning cart, and began his rounds. The building was quiet, except for the hum of servers and the occasional distant conversation from executives who never seemed to go home. He liked the solitude. It gave him time to think, to remember, to occasionally pull out his phone and look at pictures of Lily. She had lost her first tooth that week. She was convinced the tooth fairy was real, and Marcus had spent his lunch break making sure a glittery dollar bill was hidden under her pillow. Around midnight, he reached the executive floor, the top level of the building where ordinary employees rarely ventured. This was Victoria Ashford's territory. Her office occupied an entire corner, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the Manhattan skyline. Usually the floor was empty at this hour, but tonight the lights in the main conference room were on. Marcus hesitated. His job was to clean, not to intrude. But the door was slightly open, and he could hear something strange, the sound of a woman crying. He should have walked away. It wasn't his business. But something in those sobs reminded him of the way Sarah used to cry when the treatment stopped working, when hope became something they could no longer afford. Before he could stop himself, he pushed the door open. Victoria Ashford sat at the head of the long conference table, her head in her hands. Papers were scattered everywhere. Printouts of code, diagrams, notes scrawled in desperate handwriting. Her laptop screen glowed with an error message he recognized immediately. Decryption failed. Syntax unrecognizable. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were red. Her makeup was smudged. For a moment they just stared at each other, the billionaire and the janitor, separated by a gulf wider than most people could imagine. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quickly. I didn't mean to intrude. I'll come back later." He turned to leave, but something made him pause. On the screen, beneath the error message, he could see fragments of the corrupted code, and his breath caught in his throat. He knew this code. Not because he had written it, but because he knew who had. Years ago, before Sarah got sick, Marcus had worked on a project with a small team of elite programmers. The goal was to create an unbreakable encryption system, something that could protect whistleblowers, journalists, and activists from government surveillance. The project was called Phoenix. It was led by a man named Daniel Ashford. Marcus had been young then, barely out of graduate school. Daniel had been brilliant, the kind of genius who saw patterns where others saw chaos. They worked together for 8 months, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And when the project was complete, Daniel had given each team member a gift, a custom tattoo design featuring a phoenix rising from binary code. Only 4 people in the world had that tattoo. Marcus was one of them. He never knew what happened to the project after he left. He never knew Daniel had founded a company, gotten married, or disappeared under mysterious circumstances. He had been too consumed with his own life, Sarah's illness, Lily's birth, the collapse of everything he had built. But now, staring at that screen, the past came flooding back. "Wait," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Victoria looked at him. "Excuse me?" Marcus walked toward the screen, his heart pounding. "That code, where did you get it?" Her expression shifted from confusion to suspicion. "That's confidential. How do you even know what you're looking at?" "Because I helped write the original framework." He pointed at a line near the bottom. "This isn't corrupted. It's encrypted using a method that wasn't supposed to exist. It's a layered cipher, base 64, wrapped in a custom algorithm that requires a physical key to decode." Victoria stood up slowly. "Who are you?" Marcus looked at her. For 4 years he had been invisible in this building, a ghost, a nobody. But some secrets can't stay buried forever. "My name is Marcus Cole," he said, "and I think I knew your husband." The next few hours felt like a fever dream. Victoria demanded answers. Marcus provided what he could. He told her about Project Phoenix, about the team of programmers who had worked in secret, about the encryption system that was designed to be unbreakable. He told her about Daniel's vision, a world where privacy was a right, not a privilege. But he couldn't explain the code in front of them. It was Phoenix, yes, but it had been modified, evolved. Someone had taken the original framework and turned it into something far more complex. "This isn't just encryption," Marcus said, studying the lines on the screen. "This is a message. It's designed to only unlock for someone who knows the key, someone Daniel trusted." "But I don't know any key," Victoria said, her voice breaking. "He never told me anything about this. I thought the company was his life. I thought I knew everything." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Daniel was careful. He compartmentalized his work, protected people by keeping them in the dark. He paused. "There might be something, though, a phrase, a number, a memory that only you two shared, something he would have known you'd never forget." Victoria closed her eyes. She thought about their first date, their wedding day, the night James was born. 1,000 memories flickered through her mind, but none felt like a key. Then, suddenly, her eyes snapped open. "Phoenix Rising, 1987, she whispered. Marcus nodded slowly. "That's the variable in the code, but it's not the key itself. It's a hint. He was pointing you somewhere." Victoria's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. She scrolled through old photos, old notes, old everything, And then she stopped on a picture she hadn't looked at in years. It was a sketch Daniel had made on a napkin during their honeymoon in Paris, a silly romantic doodle of a phoenix with words written beneath it. From ashes we rise, 19/15/2013, the date of their wedding. Try it, Marcus said gently. Victoria typed the numbers into the decryption prompt. For a moment, nothing happened. The screen flickered. The error message disappeared, and then, line by line, the code began to unravel. What appeared on the screen made Victoria gasp. It was a video file, and in the thumbnail was her husband's face. Daniel Ashford looked exactly as she remembered him. The same dark eyes, the same crooked smile, the same way he ran his fingers through his hair when he was nervous. But there was something else in his expression, something she hadn't seen before. Fear. Victoria, if you're watching this, it means the failsafe worked. His voice was calm, but she could hear the tension beneath it. It means someone finally decoded the file I left behind. And it means I'm probably dead. She covered her mouth. Beside her, Marcus watched in silence. I'm recording this on March 3rd, 2019. In 3 days, I'm supposed to fly to Athens for a conference. But I'm not going to make it there. He paused. Someone is trying to stop Project Phoenix. Someone inside the company. And if I'm right about who it is, I won't survive the week. Victoria felt her world tilting. No, she whispered. No, no, no. I could have run, Daniel continued on the screen. I could have disappeared and kept my head down. But Phoenix is too important. What we built. What the team built. It's the only thing standing between ordinary people and total surveillance. There are governments, corporations, powerful men who would pay anything to destroy it, and someone sold us out. He leaned closer to the camera. I don't know if I'll have time to find out who, but I left the evidence, all of it, hidden in a place only you would think to look. He smiled sadly. Remember our spot? The place where I proposed? There's a safety deposit box at the bank across the street. The key is in James's baby book, tucked inside the page with his first footprints. Victoria was crying now, tears streaming silently down her face. I need you to find the box, Daniel said. I need you to expose the truth. And I need you to protect James. Whatever you do, don't trust Richard Caldwell. The name hit her like a physical blow. Richard Caldwell was her chief operating officer, her most trusted advisor, the man who had stood by her side through every crisis since Daniel's disappearance. He was in on it from the beginning, Daniel said. He's the one who sold Phoenix to the highest bidder. He's the one who arranged for me to disappear. And if he finds out you know, he'll come for you too. The video ended. The screen went dark. And Victoria sat in complete silence, her entire understanding of the past 6 years crumbling to dust. We need to move carefully. Marcus's voice cut through the fog in Victoria's mind. She looked at him, this stranger in a janitor's uniform who had just blown apart her entire life. How do I know I can trust you? She asked. It was a fair question. Marcus nodded slowly. Then he rolled up his sleeve. The tattoo was faded now, softened by time and sun, but it was unmistakable, a phoenix rising from binary code, the exact same design Daniel had sketched all those years ago, the exact same symbol Victoria had tattooed on her own shoulder the night after he disappeared, a secret tribute she had never shown anyone. Daniel gave this to 4 people, Marcus said quietly. I was one of them, and if Richard Caldwell really did what your husband said, then I owe it to Daniel's memory to help you bring him down. Victoria stared at the tattoo. She thought about all the nights she had wondered if she was truly alone, if anyone out there remembered Daniel the way she did, and here, in the most unexpected place, she had found a connection. Okay, she said finally, tell me what we do next. The plan was simple, but dangerous. They needed to retrieve the safety deposit box without alerting Richard. They needed to examine whatever evidence Daniel had hidden. And they needed to do it all before the sun came up, because once the office filled with employees, there would be too many eyes, too many questions. Victoria made a call to her driver. Marcus hesitated. "I should stay," he said. "If someone sees us together, it could raise suspicions. You're coming with me." Victoria's tone left no room for argument. "I've spent 6 years trusting the wrong people. Tonight, I trust the man with my husband's tattoo." They took the service elevator to the parking garage. The drive to Lower Manhattan was quiet, the city sleeping around them. Victoria clutched her phone, scrolling through messages from Richard Caldwell. Check-ins, updates, friendly reminders about meetings. Each one now felt like a betrayal. The bank was closed, of course, but Victoria had a relationship with the manager, a family friend who owed her more than a few favors. One phone call later, and they were being led through darkened hallways to the vault. The safety deposit box was small and unassuming. Victoria's hands shook as she inserted the key she had found in James's baby book, a key she had overlooked 100 times, thinking it was just a keepsake. Inside the box was a flash drive and a handwritten letter. She read the letter first. "My love," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm sorry. Sorry I couldn't tell you. Sorry I couldn't protect you the way I wanted to. But the truth is, I was trying to protect the world, and sometimes that means leaving the people you love in the dark. Please forgive me. Please know that every day we had together was the best day of my life. Please know that James is my greatest achievement, and you are the reason I believed anything was possible. I love you. I will always love you. From ashes we rise. Daniel." Victoria clutched the letter to her chest. She didn't try to stop the tears. The flash drive contained everything: emails, financial records, recorded conversations, a paper trail that led directly to Richard Caldwell, and a shadow network of buyers who had paid millions for access to Project Phoenix's encryption technology. But it was worse than Daniel had even known. The buyers weren't just corporations looking to exploit the technology. They were foreign intelligence agencies, criminal organizations, and authoritarian governments who wanted to weaponize Phoenix for surveillance. Richard had sold the one tool designed to protect people and turned it into an instrument of control, and he had murdered Daniel to keep it secret. The evidence was undeniable. Contracts with Richard's signature, bank transfers to offshore accounts, a recorded phone call where he casually discussed eliminating the founder before he could become a problem. Victoria listened to that recording 3 times. Each time, it felt like being stabbed in the heart. "He sat in my office," she said numbly. "He brought flowers to Daniel's memorial. He held my hand when I cried." Marcus didn't know what to say. Some evils were beyond words. "What do we do now?" Victoria asked. Marcus looked at the evidence on the screen. Years of pain, years of lies, years of a good man's murder being covered up by someone who smiled and shook hands and pretended to be a friend. "We end him," Marcus said simply, "but we do it right. No warnings, no chances for him to run. We take this to the FBI, the press, everyone who will listen, and we make sure the whole world knows what Richard Caldwell did." Victoria nodded slowly. Then she looked at Marcus, really looked at him for the first time. A janitor, a single father, a man who had given up everything for his daughter just as she had tried to give up everything for her son. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "You didn't have to get involved. You could have walked away." Marcus thought about Lily, about Sarah, about all the nights he had questioned whether his sacrifices meant anything. "Because someone once told me that the measure of a man isn't what he achieves," he said. "It's what he does when no one is watching. Daniel told me that years ago, when I was too young to understand. I think I finally do." The takedown was swift and merciless. By noon the next day, FBI agents swarmed Ashford Technologies. Richard Caldwell was arrested in his office, still holding a cup of coffee, his face a mask of disbelief. The news exploded across every network. Ashford COO arrested for murder, international espionage. Victoria held a press conference that evening. She stood at a podium, her son James beside her, and told the world the truth about her husband, about what he had built, about what he had died protecting. She didn't cry, she didn't waver. She spoke with a strength that came from finally knowing the truth. The next few months were a whirlwind. Trials, testimonies. Richard Caldwell and his network of conspirators were sentenced to life in prison. Project Phoenix was recovered and open-sourced, made available to anyone who needed protection from surveillance. Daniel Ashford was finally given the hero's memorial he deserved. And Marcus Cole, the janitor who had helped unravel it all, received something he never expected. Victoria called him into her office one afternoon, the same office where everything had changed. She sat behind her desk, looking more at peace than he had ever seen her. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what Daniel built, about what Phoenix was supposed to be, and I realized something. It needs a guardian, someone who understands the code, the mission, the responsibility." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You're not offering me a job, are you?" Victoria smiled. "I'm offering you a division, a whole team dedicated to protecting privacy and fighting surveillance. It's what Daniel would have wanted, and honestly, it's what the world needs." She paused. "The pay is significantly better than janitorial work." Marcus laughed, a real laugh, the kind he hadn't felt in years. "What about my daughter? I took this job because of the schedule." "The job comes with flexible hours, on-site childcare, and a tuition fund for Lily's future education." Victoria leaned forward. "I did my research, Marcus. You're brilliant, you always were, and you've been hiding in the shadows long enough." He thought about Sarah, about the dreams they had shared before the world got heavy, about the promise he made at her grave, to give Lily a life worth living. Maybe this was how he kept that promise. "One condition," he said. "Name it. Lily gets to visit the office whenever she wants, and she gets to call me a superhero to anyone who will listen." Victoria laughed. "Deal." 3 years later, Marcus stood on a stage at a tech conference in San Francisco. Behind him was a banner reading, "Phoenix Initiative, Privacy for Everyone." In the audience were hundreds of engineers, activists, and journalists who had benefited from the work his team had done. He gave his speech. He talked about encryption, about rights, about the importance of fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. And when he finished, the applause was thunderous. But the best part of the night came after. In the lobby, a little girl ran toward him, her pigtails bouncing. She was 9 years old now, wearing a T-shirt that read, "My dad is a superhero," in glittery letters. "Daddy!" Lily threw her arms around him. "You did so good. Everyone was clapping." Marcus lifted her up, holding her tight. "Thanks, sweetheart. Did you finish your homework?" "Almost. Ms. Victoria helped me with the math part." Victoria approached, James walking beside her. The two kids had become close friends over the years, bonding over shared dinners and weekend trips. In some ways, their families had merged, not through marriage, but through something just as powerful, mutual respect, shared history, and the knowledge that they had survived the darkness together. "Nice speech," Victoria said. "Daniel would have been proud." Marcus nodded. "I hope so." James tugged at Victoria's sleeve. "Mom, can Lily sleep over this weekend? We want to finish our robot project." "Fine by me," Victoria said. "As long as the robot doesn't destroy my kitchen again." The kids cheered and ran off to celebrate. Marcus and Victoria watched them go, a comfortable silence settling between them. "You know," Victoria said, 3 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never know the truth about Daniel. I thought I would raise James alone, always wondering, always grieving." And now?" Marcus asked. She looked at him. "Now I have answers. I have closure. And I have a friend who showed up when I needed one most." She smiled. "Thank you, Marcus, for everything." He smiled back. "Thank you for giving me a second chance, for believing a janitor could be more than what he seemed." Victoria shook her head. "You were never just a janitor. You were a father fighting for his daughter. You were a man who kept his integrity when the world tried to break him. And when the moment came, you chose to help a stranger instead of walking away. She placed a hand on his shoulder. That's what heroes do. That night, Marcus went home to the apartment he now shared with Lily. A nicer place, in a safer neighborhood, with a window that overlooked the park where they spent Sunday mornings. He tucked her into bed, read her favorite story about dragons and princesses, and kissed her forehead. "Daddy?" Lily asked, her eyes already heavy with sleep. "Yes, sweetheart?" "Are you happy?" He thought about the question, about the years of struggle, the grief, the sacrifice, the unexpected turn his life had taken because he chose to push open a door when he heard someone crying. "Yeah," he said softly, "I'm really happy." Lily smiled and closed her eyes. Within moments, she was asleep. Marcus walked to the window. The city sparkled below, millions of lives unfolding in apartments and offices and streets. Somewhere out there, Phoenix was protecting someone. Somewhere out there, the work Daniel started was making a difference. And here, in this quiet room, a single father who had once been invisible stood in the light. From ashes we rise. Some stories end with grand gestures, weddings, parades, monuments built in honor of those who sacrificed everything. But the truest endings are quieter than that. They happen in kitchens over pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. They happen in offices where someone finally gets the chance to use their gifts. They happen in bedrooms when a child asks if you're happy and you realize, maybe for the first time, that you are. Marcus Cole never set out to be a hero. He set out to be a father, and in doing so, he became something extraordinary. Because heroism isn't about capes or powers or fame. It's about showing up. It's about choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier. It's about rolling up your sleeve and revealing your scars to someone who needs to know they're not alone. Victoria Ashford learned the truth about her husband because a janitor decided to help. A conspiracy was exposed because a man chose courage over comfort. Two families found healing because strangers became friends. And somewhere beyond the veil, Daniel Ashford smiled. His phoenix had risen at last. Years from now, when people ask Lily Cole what her father did for a living, she won't talk about algorithms or encryption or the headlines he made. She'll say something simpler. He cleaned up messes, she'll say. All kinds of messes. And he taught me that the smallest people can do the biggest things as long as they never stop trying. That is the legacy Marcus Cole left behind. Not in code, not in contracts, but in the heart of a little girl who believed her father was a superhero. Because he was. He always was.